Hi everyone, I hope you are all doing well. Before I begin to tell the ways Jesus has come forward, I will use this chapter to introduce what was happening after I drew that proverbial line in the sand. Much change is happening in all areas of my life, which I had documented in a journal from May 7th to the end of October 2016. This is the beginning of the next phase. My music choice is Hold On by Wilson Phillips. On Saturday, May 7th, 2016, after coming home from the office, I went on a brief 2K walk. I had pulled something in my lower back that day before when I was gardening and needed some form of exercise, regardless of how much it was limiting me. As I walked only a few houses down the road from my front door, the sound of a cardinal bird caught my attention, and I then turned to the right, looking up and found him in a tree situated in front of a house. From this point, I was drawn straight away towards the house number 57, and thought to myself, that is the first two numbers from the amount of words in my manuscript, thinking 57,000 and something. From there, I'm drawn to look down at the license plate of a small truck and notice the first three numbers on it and thought, I'm sure that is the rest of the numbers on the manuscript. I made a mental point to check the numbers on the way back so I could confirm the numbers when I went home. When I returned, I again looked at the numbers on the license plate and noticed the ending. It is the last three on the plate that is puzzling. It was it was 5YR. Was this another sign to do with the book? Was it suggesting 5 years? What is in 5 years? Once home, I compared all the numbers to the numbers in the manuscript, and the last number was out by 2. It is now 5 years later, almost to the day, and here I am, reliving my story, which is my journey, to draw the next proverbial line in the sand. It seems like a point in time, but perpetual, in relation to it being continued, just moving on, and yes, it was a sign. It doesn't get more obvious than that, but that is now what with having the hindsight. From this point on, I will begin to explore with the reader through my experiences of how I know with certainty that it has been God who has intervened in my life, which was so needed and who continues to intercede on my journey. There is no question or doubt through my experiences whatsoever. I know with 100% confidence. It is this confidence that has brought me to tell my story, which is my truth, and through it all I have grown so much. Spiritually, wisdom, knowledge, inner strength, and so much more in this short amount of time. The list of attributes has been astonishing to me, and I feel so grateful and so blessed for this intervention. I have had so much growth in these last years, but I have also seen that this same path since I can remember was all in preparation of who I have become. I have always looked at life's happenings as lessons since a child, and I attributed that to my mother who raised me with tough love. There are so many memories of different events, and believe it or not, they mold you into who you are. So when you're learning from those experiences, think positive and don't take it personally. There's one of those memories that I want to share with our community because it was a lesson in empathy and seeing how others can be struggling behind the scenes. It still haunts me today to imagine what this child was going through in his family life. I was between 10 and 11 years old. My bedroom was separated from the other two bedrooms in our home. It was located at the other end of our family bungalow, off the kitchen and living room, close to the garage entrance. In the original house plans, this was to be the open dining room, so a brick fireplace would separate the space. This space was turned into a bedroom with a rather large window which faced towards northwest. In the room, I had a single bed which I could only position one way after my dad had built floating shelves from one wall into the corner to the short wall which behind it was the garage. At the end of the bed, which was partly under the window, I had a 4-drawer dresser lined up under the end of the window. The curtains did not fit the width of the whole window, and the end part of the window, where the dresser was, had no curtain. Outside, located under my window, was a garbage bin. We had a lot of raccoons that came from the river, and I laughed because it reminded me of the movie Groundhog Day. What the groundhog is to the golf greens is the same as the raccoons to my father, being such a menace. He finally got it right with the garden bins he built. Outside this back door was a platform or cement landing with steps on both sides, and also a higher platform for clothes hanging. One night, as I was preparing for bed and standing in front of my dresser, I looked up to see a male looking at me. I was so shocked to see this person invading on my privacy. I could feel my face go white and heard them as there were more than one. Say something, more than one, saying something outside the window as they rushed off. I didn't say anything to my parents, but I did confide in my best friend. The two of us took it upon ourselves to teach them a lesson. We kind of anticipated this one-night visit and waited in my bedroom until we heard a noise outside. As we heard a noise outside, I said something like, "Let me show you what I mean," and we both left the room, shutting the door behind. At this point, we went outside and were going to catch them in the act. We outside caught them, we almost caught them, but started yelling at them for what they were doing. It must have been loud because when we went back into the house, my dad asked what all the commotion outside was about. It was at this point I hung my head down and proceeded to tell the story of what was going on. There were two involved. Here I go with the voice thing. There were two involved, but one mother's reaction was laughter and said, "Kids will be kids." It was not too many days later in the evening when we heard a knock on the front door. It was Huey and his father. Huey was there to apologize in the presence of his father. I had never gone through this before in having to face a wrong with adults. Once Huey apologized, I went to my parents' bedroom window, which had a corner and front view of the street. I watched as Huey was slightly in front of his dad walking. Then I see his dad push Huey so hard that he fell to the ground. Once he was on the ground, I watched in horror as his dad kicked him and then grabbed at him, pulling him up, continuing to push him as they walked towards their house. There was no defense of protection for Huey. I will never forget this experience. I did not tell anyone but my best friend. How could a parent do this to his child? What kind of life did this kid have? I witnessed after this while in my grade 5 classroom something about Huey. He was being made fun of by a student, and out of anger he picked up a pair of scissors and flung them at someone who deked at the right time. The scissors hit the blackboard and the whole disrupted class became silent. The teacher who had stepped out of the room was just making her way back. I not only witnessed what silence can happen in a home unnoticed, but what effect it can have on a child. I have told this story to my grandchildren. I told them that not all people come from a loving environment, that they come that they come from. They are so loved and nurtured, but to know that others may not be in the same type of family, to look out for others. I do not know what has happened to Huey, as and if he still has anger inside. I did hear some years back that his brother moved out west and had committed suicide. Now back to what happened after I drew that proverbial line in the sand and considered my manuscript completed, at least the activity that had happened at that time. I was now on a path to have it taken from a manuscript to a book. I did try to ask of others for help in fixing what needed to be done in the book. I knew myself, and I know that I totally avoided English subjects all through school. My interests lie in the other side of my brain with the maths and sciences. This is an overview of what I was personally going through in 2016. Excuse me. For me, it is always about change, and believe me, I've had my share of so much change, which would explain at the end of the book in the poem of courage where it says, "Who would we be without?" It is how we grow and how we transform. This year in 2016, I was going through much change in all directions. Spirituality, my church, my work, in my home with family, in my finances, spiritually with dreams, with the manuscript, cleaning my house from top to bottom and outside, focusing on minor health issues. When I see change coming, and I usually know when it's coming because I have been through so much, I always question, why is it happening? If you don't understand what you are being challenged with when it comes to change, then how can you take from it what it is giving you? Then you need to take the change and make it a lesson with its negativity and turn it into a positive. I need a drink. Not easy as it sounds because sometimes it can be years later when you realize this change and what it is and what it was about. There are some of those days which I wrote about in my journal, knowing change was coming. On June 11th, 2016, I had not been writing in my journal, although a lot has happened since the last entry. I just list the events with no details. On May 22nd, we, the congregation, were given a letter from the church with statistics about the number of people who attended church and the age category. The letter contained a survey to be filled out by the members and returned. It was brought up before that there were just not enough members to support the church, and closing the doors is a great possibility. On May 30th, met with pastor in town. After discussing what I was presenting, I left the meeting with my manuscript to read. On this same day, our company was notified that they are selling the business and closing the doors at various locations, including the office that I work out of. This is all to take effect on June 1st. Less than 2 days to decide where my license is to be placed and which office is to be home base. On May 31st, met with Lily W. at her home. She is very interested in reading my manuscript. We did not discuss the content, but I did make her aware that her name is mentioned in the book through the 3 days we met. On June 1st, met with the town planner at Mississippi Mills to discuss the process of adding land from my investment property onto my permanent residence and brought the paperwork home. June 2nd, the next day are spent focusing on reestablishing my real estate business and aligning other activities on the go, such as selling my investment property, my book, and a project that I would like to follow through with. It is It is a time for reflecting on the future of many things, including sustaining my livelihood, as real estate is not supporting me, although I love what I do. June 9th. My brother helped me install a new ceiling fan in the investment property as I prepare to put it on the market. I picked up my sister from work as she is having problems with her car. I see so many times how money causes so much stress in a person's life. She just moved to a new place on June 2nd and her car is now deemed unfit to drive. She is presently strapped without enough income to help her in the situation, but yet she is forced to make a decision without the necessary resources. June 10th. I'm actively looking for another source of income, whether term or permanent, as I see the need. In summary, the events that have entered in the last month. Change in church is coming. Change in work is coming. Change in home position has happened. I'm left alone with my mom after my mom moves back to her summer residence. My sister who has been temporarily using my home with me, has now moved out. My son has moved to Ottawa, but I will be seeing him during some weeknights. I'm alone. My home has always been a family home for us all. I'm also repairing and selling my investment property as I feel this would help reduce my debt occurred over these years in real estate that were not lucrative. It would help my financial situation. Moving forward slowly with my manuscript. Moving forward slowly with my dream project, which didn't develop, but I did read a few things. Cleaning my home from top to bottom and outside. Focusing on minor health issues and the need to bring in more body strength. My spiritual growth. Almost like a 180, but not a 360. What stood out the most of all that happened when I look back during this 5-year span, which takes me up to the end of 2021, has much to do with the churches as well as finishing up with the manuscript, but I'm seeing them as intertwined. After completing the manuscript, it was very important to me to take it to the churches in our community. I'm still not sure of why I was so adamant about this, but I could not lose sight of making this happen. It was not until at this present time in May 2021 that I really started to understand why and now see how the Spirit has a way of holding back and bringing forward at the right time. I will share some of those trials which I had gone through in 2016, for there has always been an expectation on my account that this story was for the churches. If they only knew then what I know now, but then again, if I did know then what I know now, I would not have went to the churches. I was hesitant to bring this new part forward, but I can't hide what I'm seeing. Not only that, but I also now have a better understanding of the message that has come through me and is for the churches. Oh Lord, why me? But this journey of being introduced by the spirits has never been about me. It is about what I've been shown and helping God through Jesus to tell others that there is a God and spirits do exist. I so wished I could just spread all of this in a positive way, but I cannot hide my truth. I cannot speak of the positive without showing what is being shown to me as negative. Typical life. I had called each church in our community, and there are 7 churches all in different denominations, and asked if they could meet with me as I had encountered something which I considered very spiritual and wanted them to hear the story. I had no idea that my presence was being injected at a sensitive time when these churches and part of my story was being associated with the situation. I started out with my minister, who I really had had not had a conversation with previous to this. I had the last part 11. I had the last part 2, 3, and 4 of the manuscript for him to read, as I felt this was the important part of the book. It was almost the most profound. It was also the most profound. So some of you might now see, after I had gone through the complete story for you about my encounters with spirits, how it might go over with the churches. I was naive to this because my story to me was something spiritual, and I was discovering amazing things, not on my own, but through the spirits. I needed to share. I also now realize that when you mention the word medium and visit one, you are also professing to many your involvement with the so-called devil. Looks like I was setting myself up, but not so. In hindsight, I was being put into a situation where I was needing growth, as did the churches. Spiritual growth for both. I made appointments over the course of time to all the church leaders. All listened to what I had to say, except one, which would not even consider discussing with me. To me, this was worse than sitting in front of another person who loathed every word that came out of my mouth with so much disgust that this person would not even look at me. I didn't realize it then, but the Holy Spirit was with me because my throat became extremely dry, that I could not talk and started to cough deeply. I guess I was being signaled by the Spirit, you have had enough. Then I was showing this person's empathy and concern as he got up to fetch me a glass of water. I was grateful for this kind-hearted thought as I bursted out in tears once inside my car, asking myself, why am I doing this? But finished through it all. I do know why I was so determined in telling my story. It was because it was spiritual, and they are the fathers of these churches, which I consider spiritual leaders. I was again looking for help, but this time some of the reaction was worse than a door being slammed in my face. You have to understand that I was not aware that discussing spirits or the spiritual realm was a disgusting subject to many of them, which was making me feel disgusted. It was not until 2020 that my eyes started to open wide as I was amongst some of those people, and here I am telling them of the great wonders that God is sending us, to which they are condemning. There were some good responses from some of the churches, which I so appreciated hearing from one of his story. He was a substitute from Toronto in one of the churches, and it was during his last day on July 21st, 2016. He has so much faith and listened with intent, and also brought forward the story of another who was a doctor and looked to him for spiritual guidance. He advised to me was that I needed to ask God what his plans are for me in prayer and in meditation. I took his advice and was asking Jesus what it was that I needed to do. It was on July 26th I woke that I wrote about a dream I had. It was not an average dream, it was a prophetic dream. Prophetic in the sense that I knew it was Jesus and directed for me. This dream I will tell shortly when I tell you of all the ways Jesus made himself known to me. I might be looked upon as being a false prophet, but I know I'm not, because I'm doing this for God through Jesus, and Jesus has made himself known to me, and I also know my heart. The rest of the story is about how I know with 100% certainty that it is He is behind me, as is the Holy Spirit. There is no doubt in my mind, and I will tell the reader of all that has happened. As I go forward, I will tell some of those dates of which I was seeing visions and what they were associated with, as I now know that when I was looking for answers, I was being given not only acknowledgement of being heard, but relating to my answers. They are, they are through dreams and visions mostly, and I do have to figure out what they mean. What I learned to do to help me was to Google on my phone, typing in the words dreamt of, spiritual meaning of, or meaning in the Bible of. This has greatly helped me in deciphering my answers. I'm so glad others know from experience and have put together what they have learned for the rest of us. Otherwise, I could be at a total loss. I also want to bring forward what I have said, and I have said this before. The outcome or meaning doesn't always come to us when we are in that moment looking for answers. So keep an open mind until you are confident in what you are trying to figure out. It will come and you will know. It might be that you needed to understand more. Just keep your mind open. I guess this is the Holy Spirit working within you. We don't always get our answers when it happens. Remember this, for it is a good lesson when it comes to spirituality of our soul. This morning of May 19th, 2016, I ended my reading at Matthew 21, verse 36, at the site discoverrevelations.com, and decided to look up the meaning of Palm Sunday. In one of these meanings, I also read, which I can't find for the second time, that white lilies were also used from that white lilies were also used. From there, I looked up the meaning of the white lily in whatyoursign.com and read the symbolic lily meaning. The lily is often considered a Trinity symbol holding the representation of three virtues: charity, hope, and faith. There was more to the reading. It was this reading that struck me into realizing my spiritual awakening with Lily W. This is the person whose group I was so quickly led into. The symbolism that I'm just learning now goes to show that we need to learn more, and we don't always recognize the sign that has been given, even when it is staring us in the face. This just reinstates the gift of symbolism as we want to understand them and the meanings they have. Some people, including my mother, do not like the white lily. She learned from her sister-in-law that this person did not like lilies, as it reminded her of death. I can see where this comes from. Have I mentioned that I believe everything has spiritual meaning? If this is the way you want to see things. Those from a spiritual background learned what a white lily represents, just as this flower appears symbolically upon Palm Sunday. It represents from the people giving, that of charity, hope, and faith. People giving this flower to one who has died, is also giving the same message. It is not a bad sign, it is a good sign. When a person doesn't understand the spiritual message and only sees the white lily when someone dies, then you can understand why they associate this flower to death. Understanding the meaning of what has been given is just as important as from where it is coming from. We can't always see the root of fear, but looking for knowledge and understanding from a positive side can help. When I first went to Lily and met her, I found her very cheerful and accepting. Through the session, I found her to be a bit of a trickster, but I could also see the strength in her teachings and her dedication to spirituality. but I was not sure that I wanted to trust her. I have learned that when you feel fear, it is because you don't understand what it is you are facing. Once you learn about your fear, you will no longer fear it, or you will understand it and choose how to deal with it. At some point in time, you may very well face the same type of fear, or it resurfaces again. This next time may have given you more information or knowledge to challenge it in a different way. This is what happened to me, as I did not trust the personality of what I was facing and chose to leave it until it came up again. This time I see this person with more clarity as I do my teachings. This message from this session is still providing me insight and I did not grasp at the beginning. This one is so apparent but yet overlooked because I don't understand the meaning of symbolism. The person I was brought to was not White Lily but Lily W. I would have to say this is a symbol. So the spirits whisked me into this session. The spirit knew of her beliefs, and her teachings. I would say she is highly regarded as a spiritual teacher. This placed me into this session through guidance of another person, Susan B.H., a medium that is available to communicate with the spirits and a very spiritual person. The two of them did not know each other, and I did not know of Lily. Lily, as a contact, had just surfaced for Susan B.H. and given to me to check into. For all of us, there was no purpose, only connections. But I tell you, I was guided to this place and in a hurry. This was the spirits in action. They had a duty to fulfill, and it was happening soon. Upon entering the home of Lily, I was given a seed. The seed which represents spiritual truth, and after that has happened in this session, I realized that the seed represents the gift that God is communicating. The words and truth are being planted, representing charity, hope, and faith. I'm reading back over this today, June 22nd, 2017, and my emotions after reading this is so touching that I put my head down and I feel tears as I reach for the seed that rests beside me. And I do keep it beside me. This is what the seed that was given to me. I don't even know what kind of seed it is. I'm now holding this seed, and all I can think about is how blessed I am. I'm so overwhelmed with this feeling it brings tears. Why do I feel so blessed? Why have I been blessed with so much? I feel blessed with much guidance, spirituality, visually seeing spirits and visions, my family, my existence, and most of all, acknowledging the Holy Trinity firsthand spiritually. I also recall Lily saying the words trust. Even the last time we met, she looked at me in the eye and said to me, I need you to trust. How spiritually wise she is. And that ends chapter 1. So stay tuned for next week, because next week I tell you of the ways Jesus has made himself known to me. Thanks, everyone. Bye.